introduce our very special speaker. And we often don't get speakers who have a full-page story in the MOA magazine, or any magazine in particular. And Brandon was highlighted on there. I think I first read about you in the Boulder Daily Camera had an article.
Yes, sir.
And stuff. So, well, we're just very fortunate, Brandon. You have a marvelous story.
Oh, thank you.
Please, come on. Let's see if this works. Oh, it does. Great. There we go.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And then that's a laser pointer if you want to highlight anything.
All right. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How are you doing? Good. You're going to be really impressed with my PowerPoint presentation this morning. It came together about 25 minutes ago. So, no, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the invitation, and I'm excited to be here. Let's see. So my name is Brandon. I own Lift Chocolate in Boulder, and I served on active duty in the Marines for about 10 years. I'm still a reservist, so right now my billet, I'm the executive officer for 6th Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company at Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington, and I've been in that job for about 3 years now. So I'm looking to probably move this coming summer and do something else. I grew up in Loveland, just up the road. I have one brother. I played a lot of baseball in high school. My mom and dad have horses, so we grew up outside of town. And then I went to Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska from 96 to 2000. I came back here for a couple of years, and then after 9/11 and the Afghanistan campaign and Operation Iraqi Freedom kicked off, I saw a lot of other guys that were my age or even younger than me that were over there serving, and kind of felt the need to do my part. But it was never my plan in high school or college. I'd never thought I would have ended up here. So, like I said, I went to Creighton University. I studied English and Spanish there. I don't know what I was going to do that for exactly, because I never had an ambition to teach either. So it was kind of a degree for the sake of a degree. So, like I said, I kind of saw what was going on the news. Felt obligated to help out. So I went to the local Marine recruiter. My grandpa was a World War II Marine. He was on Nagasaki a few days after the bomb dropped. So he served through the Pacific campaign. So I never even went into a different office. I went straight to the Marine office. And at that time, I didn't know that there was a difference between the enlisted recruiter and an officer recruiter. And I had a college degree at that point. So I originally enlisted. I had some recruiters play some tricks on me for a while. And then, I know, right? I know, who would have thought? So I had heard that if you had a college degree that you could, get a commission. And so I was kind of asking around the office and kept getting the runaround. And then a new recruiter came into the office. He's like, "Oh yeah, let me send you over to the officer recruiter." And so I was in the delayed entry program, ready to go to San Diego. And he's like, "No, let me send you over to the captain." So I went over, met the captain, and he said, "Yeah, your fitness scores look okay. Your grades look okay. You can have an air contract if you want that, or you can go back over to the enlisted recruiter." And again, I had never in a million years thought that I would fly an aircraft. So I thought about it and was like, okay, well that could be fun. I could give that a shot. So they dropped me out of the delayed entry program and gave me over to the officer recruiter, and then I took the air contract. I went to OCS in Quantico, Virginia in 2004. That's a 10-week commissioning program. After that, all Marine officers, for those in other services here, go to what's called the basic school after commissioning. So every Marine officer you meet is at baseline an infantry officer as well. So I do have some understanding of basic infantry tactics and things like that, even though that wasn't my specialty. That's 6 months. So I did 6 months there, and a lot of the pilots and the naval flight officers, honestly, we kind of slog our way through the basic school. Like, you're out in the field, you know that this is not what you're going to be doing, and so I wouldn't say that we all gave it our best effort there, knowing that we were going to do something else, and we weren't competing for a ground job that we really wanted. Whereas all the ground officers are just giving it 110% every day. The pilots were not doing that so much. So that was a 6-month course, and then I went to what was called IFS, Introductory Flight Screening, and basically it's a civilian school where you go up in a Piper or a Cessna or something like that, and you just get about 25 flight hours. So I did that in Pensacola, Florida. And after that, I was supposed to stay there, but they needed some students to basically transfer and do some Air Force training, basically. So, the services get a chance to work together. So I thought, well, it's in Enid, Oklahoma. That's closer to Colorado. I could probably drive home on weekends or something like that. And this is all real naive, what I'm about to tell you. So I go, yeah, I'll go to the Air Force training. The Navy training, may be different depending on the time period, but the Navy training compared to the Air Force training was much more lax. The Air Force training was very strict, very regimented, and so I raised my hand for that, didn't know it at the time, but got sent there. And what I had walked into when I got there was basically 10 to 12-hour days at work every day, whereas on the Navy side, they would go in, brief their flight, fly, and go home. So it was, a 3 to a 4-hour evolution for training, and here I am like a sucker at the Air Force Base, like 10 to 12 hours every day. So this is the plane I flew in Enid, Oklahoma. This is a T-6 Texan, and you go through 4 stages at Air Force flight training. So you start out with what's called contact. That's just basic VFR flying, landing, approaches, takeoffs, traffic patterns, things like that. After that, you move into aerobatics. Somewhat self-explanatory, so loops and barrel rolls and aileron rolls and all of those things. After that, there's an instrument phase, and then finally you finish up with formation flying. I have to say the formation flying for me was very uncomfortable. The Air Force, they fly very close together, and I can't say that I have the natural comfort in an aircraft that some pilots do. You know how there's athletes and there's people who are really smart who just get it? That was never me in flight school. So absolutely not. So we were up in formation doing turns and stuff, and if you're the -2 in what's called a fingertip position, you're basically like this, rolling one way, and then you're basically pulling into the guy's belly. And you're within half a wingspan or something like that. It's really uncomfortable. I know there's some pilots in here that are probably like, no, that's no big deal, easy day, but for me, it wasn't so much. So that was Enid, Oklahoma. The thing I didn't mention yet, during the 11 and 12-hour days, I would spend a good portion of those days, or Friday night at 5 o'clock, standing at attention and reciting EPs from memory. So we had about 10 or 11 of us in the flight. We'd all be there, standing there like this, and then going through all of the emergency procedures from memory. And you'd stand there for attention for 2 or 3 hours and do that. It was lots of fun. It wasn't fun. It wasn't fun at all. Let's see. Any questions on the Air Force training or anything like that? All right. All right. And by the way, these are not my pictures. I borrowed these from the internet this morning. As we were looking through our old pictures, I didn't have too many pictures of flight school or anything like that. So, but this is the CH-58. This is what I've moved now from Enid, Oklahoma, back to Pensacola, Florida. And I guess technically this is Milton. But these are the helicopters that you fly. The progression is pretty much the same. You do contact, you do aerobatics, or well, you don't do aerobatics in a helicopter, excuse me, but you do contact, you do instruments, and then you do formation flying. And then instead of the aerobatic piece, you end on night vision goggles. So that's the progression there. This particular helicopter, I gotta say, I think the Navy could do better. It has a twist grip that can kill an engine, and you have nervous students in the aircraft. So we actually lost a student while I was there because he got nervous, rolled the twist grip off, killed the engine over some trees, and came down into the trees. He died. His instructor lived but broke his back. So it's the reason they have that is they expect you to be able to do what's called a full auto rotation. Any helicopter pilots in here are all fixed wing? That's right, sir. That's right. So in this aircraft, you should be able to take the aircraft from altitude, pull the collective at the bottom, which loads up the head, and then slide it on. And that's, if you have an engine failure or something like that, you can still use the inertia of the head to save yourself. Well, this kid, like I said, he rolled the twist grip off, came down into the trees, and the instructor really didn't have a way to do it, a way to save him. There are a few other, and it still happens. There's empty grass fields where you do the auto rotations and things like that, and you're supposed to slide on. Well, they roll a lot of those helicopters because one of the students will, give it too much pedal, can it, and then as he comes on, hits and rolls over. So we had a couple of those incidents while I was there. So after helicopter training, you basically select your airframe and where you're going to be stationed. I selected, luckily, CH-53s in Hawaii, and that was my first choice, which was odd because I certainly wasn't the best student in the class, and usually that's kind of a meritocracy thing, but the best students in the class wanted the attack helicopters, so they wanted either the Cobra or the Huey, and so I got the CH-53 in Hawaii. Before I was able to go to Hawaii, I had to go to New River, North Carolina to basically go through CH-53 Echo training. This is a CH-53 Echo. This is a bigger helicopter than the one I flew in the fleet, but we all had to get qualified on this before we could break out to our individual squadrons. So I want to show you a couple of things on this one. One, the fuel probe. Can't see it here, but, well, maybe you can. You can count 7 rotor blades on the top, and then you can look at this tail, and there's a 7-degree cant on that tail that provides additional lift. There's 1, 2, there's a third engine on the other side of this aircraft. So this one's really a big, strong helicopter, can pull a house out of the ground. Let's see, so that was 6 months. That was between November in 2006 to about June of 2007. So I got qualified on the Echo, and then then it was time to move to Hawaii. Let me see.
Sir, on the fuel probe, does that extend forward?
It does. It pops out just a little bit. So I'm sure they could do it with an Air Force plane, but the Marines do have a little refueling capability with the C-130. Everybody know what a C-130 is? Basic cargo plane. It's also a very cool plane. It's funny that more students don't want to select it. Like, it can do those short field takeoffs and landings. That's a tremendous capability that you don't perceive as something that's cool when you're a student. It's like jets or guns or whatever, but I mean, it's a fantastic capability that that aircraft has. All right. So this is the flight line in Hawaii, and there's several 53 deltas. You can see there's no fuel probe on the front, and then I'll maybe show another picture of.
What field is this, Brandon?
This is Kaneohe Bay, so Marine Corps Air Station Kaneohe. All right. This is not one of my pictures. I took this from the internet, but it's a good picture. You can actually see the emblem on the front. It's kind of a famous squadron in the Marines. It's the Ugly Angels. So I wasn't in that squadron. I was in HMH 363, the Red Lions. But this is up in the training area on Oahu, just a section landing. Again, you can see no fuel probe. If you look here, can you see how the tail is straight vertical here and it's not canted the way the one was on the Echo? And then there's 6 rotor blades. I'll show you this tail rotor and see if you can see it. Let's see, go back. So again, you can see that cant. And then it's not there on this one, only 2 engines. So in the CH-53 Delta, it was an older aircraft, but we like to tell ourselves that it's more maneuverable and things like that. And bottom line, the Echo, the CH-53 Echo is a much more capable platform.
Could the helicopter operate on one engine?
Yes, sir. I'll get to that in a little bit. Let's see. Again, I took this picture from the internet, but this is something that we would do in Hawaii. We would do what's called helo casting with some Navy SEALs. So we would fly over to Kauai from Oahu. Does everybody know the geography of Hawaii? Which islands where? Kauai is far enough to the west that you can't see it from Oahu. So, and there's actually a point flying a helicopter where flying in between, where you can't see either Kauai or Oahu. So you're in a helicopter and there's nothing but water and you're at, 500, 1,000 feet. So that was uncomfortable too. It's like, all right, I guess if I have to land, it's going to be in the water. But anyway, so this is a helo casting mission. This is likely a Navy SEAL jumping out of the back. So you would come down to a low hover and try and move it forward just at below 5 knots. And these guys would jump out of the back. And theoretically, you should be about 5 feet off the water. Maybe something like this, but you get a lot of rotor wash, so it's hard to see. All right. Let's see. So here's a couple of pictures early on in Hawaii. This is in the squadron. I think I'm still a lieutenant at the time. Yeah, I think there's single bars there. So yeah, this is in the squadron. This is HMH 363, and then. This picture was actually taken on deployment. So this is in Iraq, which I can get to here shortly. So I get to Hawaii, and I'm there training for about a year before we deploy. Let's see. I believe that this picture was taken in Iraq, but I don't remember for sure. It could be Afghanistan. These vast expanses of desert, they look very similar. So it's hard to remember, but I think this was taken there. Let me see if I've got a map of Iraq. Here we go. All right. And I'll go back to that other picture. Let's see. So here's Iraq. We were in Al-Assad Air Base from July of 2008 to February of 2009. So Al-Assad is right in here somewhere. And we would fly different missions depending on day or night and things like that. So a lot of times during the day, we would do sections out to the west. So there was a small base out here called Korean Village. So that was a pretty long flight. It was 45 minutes, which may not seem like a long time, but what we were doing in Iraq was called general support, basically meaning that we were flying fob to fob, taking people and stuff where it needed to go. And so most of the flights were, 15 to 20 minutes tops, and you're just bouncing from spot to spot. So that was a longer flight, 45 minutes to an hour one way. And then also during the day, we would fly to Ramadi, we would fly to Taqadum, which was right in here somewhere. And then the night sections were different. So we had to fly under cover of night for safety reasons if we were going to Baghdad. And we would basically do several stops along the way. Like I said, we would bounce from place to place. So we would start in Al-Assad, we would go to Ramadi, we would go to Taqadum, and then Fallujah was right in here somewhere. And then finally we'd go into Baghdad and then back. And that would be a solid 8 hours between all of the stops and loading and unloading in a night.
Did you ever catch scattered gunfire when you were doing those missions?
Actually, no, sir. Iraq in 2008 was very safe, at least from a ground fire standpoint. Our bigger issues were maintenance and dust. Let me see. So if Al-Assad is right here, there was a small base up here called Rawa, and we had a pretty scary night up there. It was dusty out, and then there's a difference between flying on night vision goggles in high light and in low light. So if you've got a good moon out, you can actually see pretty well. But if it's low light, no moon, and dust, it's just pitch black. You might as well not have your NVGs on, except put them down to land or something like that. But you keep them on the whole time, and you basically fly on instruments at altitude. Well, we were going in to land at this little fob called Rawa, and the -1 in our section missed the zone. So he pulled really hard and made this big left-hand turn. So I tried to stay with him and rolled it over and was trying to stay in position. But it does everybody know what vertigo is? Yeah, so I got like a massive case of vertigo. And we were low. We were like, I want to say somewhere between 200 and 300 feet. And there were, rising hills and things like that we knew were there. But it was pretty scary because it was like, oh my God, which way is up right now? And like looking at your instruments, trying to figure out how to recover this. And luckily, the other pilot, he was the aircraft commander at the time. I was the co-pilot. He pulled a ton of collective to just get us away from the ground. He didn't tell me, though, that he was also not feeling right, so he kept trying to roll the aircraft over. Like, he didn't spatially this way or that way, know which way was up, and was trying to turn it over. And it was just really lucky my vertigo or whatever was like this. So I couldn't tell if this way was up or if this way or whatever. So I kept him from rolling it over. he kept me from pushing it into the deck. And luckily, with enough collective, we got it up away from the ground and circled around and came back and landed. But that was a scary night. At the debrief, we all kind of, I don't know, we talked about it like, yeah, I guess it was, need to be a little bit more careful about the vertigo. But that had a lasting impact. That was a scary night for me for sure. Let's see. We also did a really cool mission in Iraq. Right down here somewhere, there is what is called FOB-Mediasis. And it's basically a few bunkers in the middle of the desert. The Iraqi National Army was down there. There was an infantry company and a small helicopter landing pad. So we actually sent 3 helicopters down there, and we had 2 or 3 tents, and we stayed down there for all the way from November through the New Year to support the Hajj. So a lot of the Muslims were making their trip to Mecca, and our job down there was just to be there as support. We didn't really do too much. There wasn't really a lot of support needed, it turned out, but so we would do training flights during the day, and we would just be camping at night. Any questions on Iraq?
I have one quick question. The base you were at there at Ramadi, is there another Marine base close to Ramadi?
Yeah, so, there were Marines all around this place, sir. Al-Assad was the big base that we were operating out of, and that was kind of like a joint force base. So they had the big airport, they had the long runways, everything like that. So we were stationed there, and we would basically go to and from Al-Assad, stopping in places like Ramadi, Taqadum, Fallujah, Baghdad. We would go back and forth from that base, and that was where we operated out of. Let's see. These are some of the guys from the squadron there.
How many on your crew?
5, sir, if we're fully loaded. So we've got 2 pilots, pilot and a co-pilot up front, and then we have, actually in some cases 6. So we'd have a crew chief, we might have a gunner on each door, and then a gunner on the tail. So right here, you can mount a 50 cal as well.
Were you serving with any women at all?
Yes. Funny story about that. So there was a woman pilot in our squadron. She was awesome. And her call sign was NOD. It was an acronym for No Offense, Deb. And so all of the guys, whenever they were going to say something highly offensive, they would preface it with No offense, Deb. And then they would say whatever it is that they were going to say, and her call sign became NOD. So, NOD. Let's see. All right.
But you were going to go back to a couple of the other ones.
Oh, did I miss a few? Okay. Yeah. So, like I said, I think this is Iraq. I could be wrong. This might be Afghanistan, but when you go to a new place, a lot of times it doesn't look like you think it's going to look. I mean, Iraq and Afghanistan, they look exactly like you think they're going to look. It's just there's no surprise when you get there. Tragic story about this guy. This guy's name is John Faircloth. Really cool Marine, ton of charisma. So he was about a week or 2 from getting out of the service back in Kaneohe, and we lost a helicopter in the bay. We had a hydraulic failure, and he was in the back. He wasn't even scheduled to be on the flight. He got added later because of a crew change. And we lost him. So a lot of the systems in a helicopter, they're called redundant. So if something failures, there's another system there to pick it up. Well, a dual hydraulic failure was, I mean, the chances are like close to zero. And they had one and ended up in the bay. And so he was going home for good, out of the service in a week or two. It's one of the most tragic stories, and I'm sorry to put a downer, but yeah, I like that kid. Let's see. Here and here, that's my best friend from the squadron, Kurt Thormalen, also a ton of charisma. Texan, just one of the best dudes you'll ever meet. Let's see.
So what functioned in each of those hands? They were part of your crew, like you said.
Yes, sir. So we were the pilots. Let's see. These guys were both crew chiefs, and then John was an aerial observer. So,
What does a crew chief do?
a crew chief basically can troubleshoot maintenance issues in the air and runs the back of the helicopter. So the aerial observers work for him. They can operate the 50 cal, do things like that. Let's see. All right. Okay, so here's a map of Afghanistan that I, again, pulled from the internet this morning. Sir, you were flying in and out of Bastion 2?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was all in Helmand Province right down here for everybody else. So Bastion and Leatherneck is right to the west of this spot, Lashkar Gah. So we would basically fly all throughout this area. Let's see. I was in Afghanistan from, let me think here, February of 2010 to September. The stark difference between Afghanistan and Iraq, remember how I said that Iraq was pretty safe from a ground fire standpoint? Afghanistan was much more sporty. So our squadron did experience some ground fire, and they could really see it at night. We suspect that we had it during the day. Like the guys in the back would say that they saw muzzle flashes and things like that. But there were several helicopters that were shot down while we were there. One funny story, my best friend that I showed you a couple of slides ago, we were just doing a day flight up to the north. So up in this area, there's an area where there's Nowzad and Sangin, and that was really not a good area, but we didn't know that it was that bad. So we were doing a mission up there. Like I said, again, general support, delivering, people and stuff. And we both have a thing for Dr. Dre. So we're on the ICS, which is the comm system in the plane, and we're going back and forth, and we're rapping Dr. Dre, and with the guys in the back laughing and having a great old time. We do that mission, and then the next day, in Sangin, the place that we had just flown into, an Air Force helicopter gets shot down. So it was kind of like ignorance is bliss. You didn't know that we were that was a dangerous spot, but that really turned into a dangerous spot. Right down the flight line from us, there was a 53 that was hit by an RPG and had one of the ox tanks blown up and lost some landing gear. They were actually able to take it back and land it. Anybody know how you would land a helicopter that's missing landing gear?
Carefully.
Yes, and used mattresses. Stacked used mattresses. Yep. And there's still so much rotor wash from an aircraft that big that getting the mattress to stay on the ground is a challenge. So you have to have very carefully, and someone down there using all of their might to hold that thing down in one spot so they can set In this case, it was the back left landing gear for that 53. And so they had someone holding it down, and he came down and put that part of the frame just on the mattresses.
Man, he drew the short stick that day.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me see here. There was also, I don't know if you'd call it a 1 in a million shot. There was a Cobra while we were there that was flying at 1,500 feet. It wasn't hit by a man pad or anything with a seeker. They think that it was an RPG that they shot up, and just the explosion didn't hit the aircraft directly, but hit close enough and blew up that it was actually able to knock the Cobra out of the sky. So Afghanistan was much more dangerous from a ground fire standpoint. Had an interesting experience. I got stuck at Fob Delaram. So if Lashkar is here, Bastion and Leatherneck is right here. Delaram would be further out to the west. It was probably 25 minutes from Bastion Leatherneck, which is the big base that we were flying out of. I was doing a lot of functional check flight stuff. So basically testing the systems on the aircraft, taking it up, flying it, checking systems, and then we had a downed aircraft in Delaram that was having a maintenance issue, and they thought that they were going to be able to take some parts out, swap them out, and that we would be able to fly it home. So my mission that day changed from doing functional check flight stuff to an aircraft recovery. Well, it didn't turn into that. The maintenance issue was much bigger than we thought it was. And so I got stuck in Delaram for a week while they were trying to fix this aircraft, and there was a dust storm too. So much so that you can't see further than, I don't know, a quarter of a mile tops. In Afghanistan, it would just like come and stick. There were spots where you could get above it, so it would be clear above, but then you'd have this dust cloud near the ground, and you couldn't see anything. So we got stuck in Delaram for a solid week. I had a few run-ins with some senior enlisted Marines who were not excited about the fact that I didn't have a cover on or anything like that. So their uniform regulations were a big deal.
How does the dust affect the copter or your? It would depend on the importance of the flight, ma'am. There were most times, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to fly if there's a quarter mile of visibility. We did have a flight where what's called the DASC, who controls all of the support or the aerial support going on in the AO, order us to fly one day in conditions like that. We had a general that needed to go from spot to spot, and so we did it. It's uncomfortable, especially if you're flying in formation and the aircraft can't see each other. Or if you lose sight, because it's not like a consistent quarter mile. Like it's like, oh, okay, there's a quarter mile. Okay, now I can't see anything, and so you just fly really close to the ground and try and maintain some sort of reference and fly slow. Sir, did you do it a different way? Did you?
We got in dusty conditions. In fact, there was a season every summer, they had a continuous 30-knot wind from the north. I forgot what they called it, but it would go through our camp for about 3 months out of the year with never a let-up of 30 knots of wind. But in some dusty conditions, one time we were going to Kandahar from Shingen, and we were talking to the Air Force controller, and he told us to get up to about 10,000 feet. So we were above the dust, above what was known as the Red Desert, which is in the southern part of the country. And we could not see the ground, so we were basically flying instruments. And the other pilot was freaking out, but luckily I had some instrument time. But, so we made it through okay, but normally we tried to avoid dust. Normally that's a grounding condition. So we had minimums like you did and like everyone else would have. Common sense minimums, but
Yes, sir.
sometimes you had to go.
Yes, sir.
Now,
Yeah,
doesn't the dust, though, impact your gas turbines, increased wear and all that stuff?
it does. Yes, sir. So I'll go back to kind of what I alluded to earlier. The gentleman asked if you can fly on one engine. You can. So like I said, I was doing a lot of functional check flight stuff, and one thing we have to do is we have to test the engines. There's a procedure for that. You have to test in what's called a hoagie, or hover out of ground effect. So think of ground effect as, I guess the easiest way to explain it is within one rotor distance of the ground. So just out of that is what's called a hoagie, hover out of ground effect. For us, it was about 100 feet. We would go up to 100 feet and hold it there, take readings from the instruments. And we would have to do this to have aircraft that were capable of flying missions. They have to be functionally check flight sound or whatever. So I was doing a lot of that. The dust would get in the engines, to your point, sir, and it's so hot there in the summers. I mean, it's 110 to 120 degrees every day. So there's also the potential for dirty engines to overheat. So we were getting a lot of, as we're doing our functional check flights that must be done in order to fly missions in these aircraft and that are part of the procedures, like you have to do them, you're getting all these cockpit warnings, like red and yellow flashing lights. So one day, went out for a functional check flight, went over to the pad, did our hover, and getting the normal red and yellow flashing lights in the cockpit that we're used to seeing at this point. And then we went outbound. Well, we lost an engine as we were going outbound on this functional check flight. Now, luckily, we're still fairly close to the base or whatever, but it is an emergency procedure, and if you've lost one engine, especially in those conditions, it's not comfortable to just have one left. You can still fly. So we called back to base, declared an emergency, and they freed up the runway for us. So we flew back, and then luckily the pilot that I was with was really skilled, great hands, natural pilot, not unlike me, not two left hands or whatever I had. So he was on the controls and I was the aircraft commander. I declared the emergency, we flew it back to base, and we did a running landing because we wouldn't have the power to execute like a hover landing or a no hover landing. So we did have an engine failure. You can fly on one engine, and the dust and the heat all contributed to that. So let's see.
So you can fly on one engine
Yes, sir.
for a while?
Yes, sir. Yep, you can. Like I said, that's a lot of aircraft to fly on one engine. You can do it, and your landing is definitely different. You have to maintain forward airspeed to land like that. So this is.
Lovely picture.
Oh, thanks. This is a homecoming from Afghanistan. So this is my son Evan. It's my wife Jacqueline, and this is Andrew. So I left. I think Andrew was a couple of months old when I left, and I came back and I grabbed him and he looked at me like, "Who the hell are you? What are you doing? Why are you get off me?" But yeah, that was a happy day for sure.
Where'd you come in to?
Back to Kaneohe. Luckily, the air station right there, they flew us right into the air station, get off the plane, and then it was a fun event in the squadron space, and then a 5-minute drive back to our house. So we didn't even have to fly into Hickam or Pearl Harbor. It was just right home.
So when you deploy, you don't take your helicopters with you, do you? Or you
We
just
do,
take over
yeah.
one of the units?
Oh, I should have covered that. I didn't even think to cover that. It's an excellent question. The CH-53 can be broken down and have the blades folded back so it will fit in an Air Force C-5. And now I'm going to get confused with my services. Is it the C-5 or the C-17? One of the big Air Force planes. So you can fold the blades back, let me see if I can show you how this goes. All right. So to fit it in one of the Air Force planes, you can fold all the blades to the rear, and then you can't see it right here, but there's a break in the tail right here. It will actually fold around to the front. So this stabilizer will come over the fuselage right here. You drop the auxiliary fuel tanks off of it, and then so you can pack up 10 aircraft or so and ship them in and out of country. We were in a rotation in Iraq and Afghanistan where there were aircraft that were deployed and aircraft that were at home. That said, all of the CH-53Ds were going to the boneyard. Like, they're becoming obsolete at this point, so we were having to move aircraft in and out of theater while we were there because it was a known thing. They had another year of life, and then they were going to end up at this big junkyard in Scottsdale, Arizona. So we did have to take aircraft in and out.
When you flew your mission, did you stick with the same aircraft all the time, or did you jump from one?
Jump from aircraft to aircraft, sir. So you'd go into the maintenance portion of the squadron, and they would have up aircraft, functional check flight aircraft, and down aircraft. And so you'd have to keep those in a green up arrow status.
Did you have the same crew with you all the time?
No, sir. Different combinations of pilots, crew chiefs, aerial observers. Let's see. So it really was a good thing that they were getting rid of these. Like I said before, I showed you the Marine that we lost. We had, I don't know, a couple of we were starting to have major incidents with this helicopter mechanically. It was just too old. They had me testing an aircraft back in Hawaii after Afghanistan, so probably 2011, with massive head jumps. And so what that feels like is that feels like a with the rotors. So you take off, and then the airframe is slamming. So a dual hydraulic failure. The squadron that replaced us right after I left the squadron, HMH 363, the squadron that I was in, went back to Afghanistan as I had taken a different job. But I lost one of the people I worked with in my shop in the S4. They hot seated an aircraft. So what that means is I get back from my mission, I leave the rotor spinning up top, everything is still going, and then you swap out crew while that's going on. So one person's holding controls, one pilot changes out, he holds the controls, and then the next crew gets in basically. So this aircraft went out, did a mission, and they were hot seating it. My good friend hot seats to another Marine that had worked for me, was still in the squadron. They go back out, and the accessory gearbox, basically this part right here, had a massive catastrophic failure. So there's generators and several other components that are all spinning up there. It just came apart, and they came out of the sky like just straight down, like never a shot, just fell out of the sky. So it was a good thing that they finally got rid of the CH-53 Delta, and the Echo probably needs to go soon as well. So they're coming out with the CH-53 Kilo shortly.
Were the Marines the only branch of the service was flying that aircraft?
Yes, sir. There is an MH Pavlo that the Air Force flies, but the CH-53 it was just the Marines. Let's see here. How am I doing on time?
Fine. But how about now, how the heck did you ever become interested
in chocolate.
Let's see. So I've always loved to cook since I was little. I always watched Channel 6, PBS, Jacques Pepin, and I don't know if anybody remembers Justin Wilson, the Cajun guy. I loved his show. Yeah. So
Your wife must love you.
yes and no, sir. Yes and no. Sometimes my obsession. So while I was on deployment, I really decided that I wanted to do this, and I bought all of the Culinary Institute of America textbooks, probably 400 pages each, and there were 4 or 5 of them, and I read all of them cover to cover on deployment in my downtime. And
What did your friends think of you?
it was just part of the deal. They're like, oh, he's nerding out on the cookbook again. So so I read those books and kind of decided that you can teach yourself to cook. Like, you can watch Food Network, you can watch Channel 6, you can watch a YouTube video and teach yourself to cook. But certain things in pastry, like chocolate, like sugar, laminated doughs, some stuff like that, you really have to have someone teach you, and you have to have some special equipment. So after I got off of active duty in 2013, I went to pastry school. If I was bad at flying, I was worse at chocolate, and kind of developed this mild obsession with it. And then I just really started loving it, and eventually I got better at it. And so, I had intended to start a business out of my own kitchen, and was starting to develop products, and had just rented shared kitchen space to really try and build a business from the ground up. And I was in the right place at the right time, and a chocolate business in Boulder came for sale. And it's been fantastic. It was the running start that I needed. There were already accounts, cash flow, all of those things that I knew nothing about. So I bought Concertos in Chocolate in 2017. The name Lift comes from the helicopter, obviously. Although I have had people ask me if that's like a pot thing. No, it's not a pot thing. So I've expanded. I've started offering a lot of my own products, and really worked on rebranding and getting it out there. So we're in 32 stores, Whole Foods in 7 states. We're in Lucky's for holidays specifically. And they have stores all over, or not all over, but in places in the Southeast, in the Midwest, and around here. And today I'm going to do my first delivery to Nordstrom. So that's a big accomplishment for us, because it's a higher end store. It's where we want to be. And so we're taking some Christmas products to the Park Meadows, Flatirons, and the Cherry Creek store, and taking that later today. So I'm excited about that. Let's see. So here's just a kind of a glamour shot. I don't even think I'm really making anything. That was just for a picture. Another glamour shot.
Brandon, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
When you came out of flight training, you had the choice to fixed wing or a helicopter, is that right?
I think the flight instructors thought that, you know what, you need something that goes slower. So I got the helicopter. Yes, sir, you do have a choice. You can put a wish list down. And I loved what I ended up with. I think those big helicopters are so cool. So yes, you do have a choice, and then the instructors look at you and go, that F-18 might not be in your future. So.
Still keeping your license up?
No, sir. Flying was never a passion for me. It was something that the Marines told me I was going to do, so I did it. I still, if anything, I miss the squadron, and I miss the guys from the squadron, and the teammates, or the crew concept, so to speak.
Brendan, what would you say is the biggest thing that you gained from being in the military?
That's a good question. Discipline has to be one thing. Ability to deal with stress, I guess, another. the teamwork concept, and let me see. I don't know. It was really a fantastic experience for me. I still love it. Being a reservist right now, I don't think I do it because I make any money. And actually, I think it's the opposite. I think it costs me money in my business every time I leave. But it's such a good thing to have in your life, and putting yourself around the right people. It means a lot to me. My CO, I have a great CO. I love working for him. And so, yeah.
When you first started talking, you said something about how many years you've been doing chocolate, and you said, now I'm leaving. Are you going someplace?
No, sir. So I come and go a lot. My reserve unit is up in Joint Base Lewis McChord. So I have to travel up there at least once a month. I travel quite a bit for that. So does everybody know what Anglico is? So the unit I'm in now is Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company. So we coordinate surface fires and air fires. My job, even though I'm not flying anymore, I still work with aviation. I'm a FAC, a forward air controller. So basically, I control targeting for the F-18s, the A-10 Warthogs, the Cobras, the Apaches, and I transmit what's called a 9-line to them, which is targeting information. It's a hard job because the battlefield is so complex now, with where friendlies are, where the enemy is, where artillery fire is coming from. So integrating all of that and keeping it all safe, and keeping guys on our side safe, and putting ordnance where it needs to go. It's a hard job, so challenging, and I like it.
So do you concentrate on a specific area? Is Afghanistan still pretty hot, or what?
My unit was stood up specifically for the North Korea threat. So I'm actually in a newer unit. It came around in 2013, 2014. It's up on that northeast coast, to be right across the way from North Korea. And actually with I don't know what you'd call it, the lessening tensions with North Korea, we've lost a lot of our exercises that we were going to. Like I went to South Korea last year, and then we lost a lot of those exercises this year because less of a threat or whatever.
Any other questions right now?
Yes, tell us where your shop is briefly.
So we're at 6395 Gun Park Drive in Gun Barrel. There's Boulder, and then there's the people in Boulder who say that Gun Barrel is not Boulder, although it's in the city limits if you look on a map. Yep. So that little extension on the diagonal.
On the handout you have, about Brandon, it has the address and also his website. And for us, we fortunately live just down the street from him. So every time I've needed some chocolates that would impress people, we scoot right down here. And we've sent several different collections off to my mother-in-law.
So impressed. How many people do you have working for you?
It usually varies, sir, depending on the season. So I've had as many as 18 at one time, and it'll come back down to 12, 10 as we get out of the Christmas season. I'll still need to stay pretty heavy for Valentine's Day, but after that, like in the summer, it'll come down.
You're not moving your shop, are you?
Not anytime soon, sir. But we may outgrow the space. It's a small spot, so I'm hoping that we outgrow the space in maybe the next 3 to 5 years.
A nice bunch of workers there. Whenever we visit, you have nice talks and conversations, and everyone's kind of.
And if you're interested in the chocolate, we offer tours. So if you call me ahead of time and come with a group, I'll show you the machines. I'll show you how we make everything. Talk about the tempering process, everything like that.
Brandon, one question. You mentioned that you were someplace and the enlisted personnel gave you trouble at that time?
Yes, sir. So I was. We don't fly, like when we would fly in country, we would take our helmet, a flight bag with our pubs and everything else. We weren't taking covers and a clean flight suit and everything like that. So when I was stranded in Fob Delaram in Afghanistan, I had a Marine gunnery sergeant come up to me, and I'm a captain at the time, and he's like, "Sir, where's your cover?" And I go, "Gunny, I'm sorry, we're stranded here. We're from another base. We don't have our uniforms. We're on a broken down helicopter, and we're walking around the base trying to get something to eat." And he's like, "Well, you can't be walking around here like that." And I go, "Gunny."
This is Afghanistan.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, so he didn't want to let it go. And eventually I had to like, "Gunny, walk away from me right now." Because it was a bad situation. We were stuck there. We didn't have our uniforms. There was nothing we could do about it. I couldn't go buy a cover or anything like that, or a clean uniform, and neither could the lance corporals or anybody with me. We're all like this. Yep, we're sorry, and yes, we're here in Afghanistan, so let's not get crazy about uniform regulations. Sir?
That guy sitting up there is a recovering Marine drill sergeant.
Got it, sir. I'll stand by. I didn't shave this morning, so.
You're off the hook, you're okay.
Thank you, sir, thank you.
Just to be clear, senior NCOs in all the services love to dress down an officer.
Yeah, but I never figured out how to do it.
Experienced that.
Every time I did it, I get in trouble.
Well, Brandon, thank you so much.
Oh, it was my
for
pleasure.
joining us.
Thank you very much.
Oh, challenge plan.
Fantastic, thank you.
We'll give you a tour.
Awesome.
Time.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been wonderful.
And I strongly encourage you to visit Brandon's store.
And these are your samples back here, right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Can they order online?
Yes, you can go to liftchocolates.com.
We have these for free?
So please do that. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Oh, you've got a great